My name is Jonelle Henry. I'm originally from Kingston, Jamaica, and I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, currently living in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the southeast side. After I'd been in DC, I was connecting with so many people from Florida. So a lot of people from Florida were here, even from my college. So there was a good, maybe like 10 of us that were here in DC. And one of those people included a really good friend of mine, another really great friend. We were in the same program at University of Florida, and she actually became an attorney. And so she was here in DC going to law school, and so we reconnected, and it was great because it was like another familiar face. And she was actually a mentor of mine in college. So it was just great that, from Florida to DC, it was like they were home. It was little moments, little bits of home everywhere. And so that was really great. And shortly after we reconnected, I remember going to her graduation party and just kind of reconnecting with her. I started dating her brother. We were in this relationship. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't good. It was very, very worldly. And it was his sister, my friend that I went to school with, my mentor, who made the decision to tell me one day that her brother was cheating on me. He was unfaithful. I mean, a whole bunch of things go through your head. Like, what's my life gonna be like right now, Like, I put myself in this situation. There was guilt associated. There was anger, lots of anger. And I was just thinking like, wow, like, that caused obviously tension between their relationship. That's your blood. She was the one that really kind of opened my eyes to everything. And she's like, listen, I know you and my brother are in a bad place, but I think your soul is more important. And I want to introduce you to the God that I serve and the God that I love. And I am so grateful for that decision, because that in itself was drama just between her and her brother. And so the fact that she felt, even in our friendship, that me getting to know God was the most important thing at that moment, that's something that stayed with me for forever, I imagine. It's just something that I've never forgotten. And it was a sacrifice. She invited me back into her home, and she was just like, let's pray, let's talk through some things, let's make sure that you're doing okay. And so that was really the beginning of my relationship with God. I didn't know it at the time. I thought my friend was consoling me, and she was, but this was the first time someone was consoling me for using the scriptures, which in my experience, you only do that when someone's dying, And maybe I was dying spiritually. I didn't have this relationship with God. It was broken. And this crazy relationship was essentially what woke me up. I was just like, whoa. And, I grew up in a pretty, kind of Christian environment, not so much in my household. Like, we were, we obviously were Christians, but we weren't going to church every Sunday. But my grandmother, I had this influence. I knew about God. But by the time I got to college, it was just like, the role reversal. It's less about God and more about me. And I was the one in charge of my life. Even as I decided to make Jesus the Lord of my life, there was still a lot of things that Jonelle had to work through. And I think that's something I've shared with so many women that I've had the pleasure of just, studying the Bible with. It's just like, you get out of that water, that baptism water, and it's just like, things, you still have to work on things. You may still need to consult God on things. You may still need to figure things out. You may still need therapy. You may still need to, forgive your family. And so those were challenges that I had, because life doesn't really stop. It just kind of continues. Your mindset is just what's different, right? And your devotion to God is different. And so you kind of, travel through life a little differently, but those same problems are still there. If you were broke before, you're broke now, And so those were like some of the hard lessons I learned, but I had such a great support system around me to make sure that I didn't do it by myself.
My God is moving. My God is really moving. My God is really moving. My God is really moving. You barely moving. My God is really moving. My God is really moving. My God is really moving.
Shortly after I became a Christian, I was, kind of living this great Christian life. I was going to church. It was fun. People were cool. I got to listen to live music, like all these different things I thought I wasn't going to do. I was really enjoying my walk with God. I was never someone who journaled. And I remember journaling and just doing all these really cool things, and just being around other people my age, my place in life, just being around so many people that were doing the same thing. That was amazing. And then I remember one morning I was getting ready for work, and I got the news that my father had a stroke. And this was probably about maybe a year or a year and a half or so after I got baptized. And so I was just like, all right, I got to be on the next flight to Florida to, I didn't think anything past that. I just knew I had to get there. And while I was in flight, he passed away. He was brain dead. And when I got off the plane, I remember my aunt picked me up to take me to the hospital, and she explained the situation to me, and I was truly devastated. And the first thing I thought was, oh, God, where were you in this situation? I realized that the same God that I was angry at was the only God that was providing me any comfort. So the only God that was giving me peace, and all those things you read in Hallmark cards, this was the same God that I was really angry at. One of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 3:5, where it's just trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. Well, I didn't get it, and I also didn't know how to trust God in that moment. And so it was, that was such a tough time. It was probably the most raw that I had been with God, post-baptism. The most honest I was with him. There were lots of tears, and I allowed people to see that, and that was really hard because it's just a very vulnerable place to be. But I was vulnerable with God, and I think at the end of the day, that's what he's looking for, that kind of connection. And once that's exposed, as ugly and sad and raw as it is, he can deal with that wound. He can bandage that wound up, and scriptures talk about that. And so trusting God took a while. Following the death of my father, I had to rebuild it again. That took my relationship to the next level. It made it more real, and it definitely made it more personal, because people were around, but when something like that happens, it's sometimes you don't know how to process people's comments. Some stupid things were said, but you don't know how to process people even helping you, and so I think when we talk about God, giving you peace of mind, peace in spirit, that's really something that, humans can't really, they can't do that. There are lessons that you're still going to continue to learn. And I think the time period between when the disaster happens or something bad happens and me questioning God, I think it's shortened over time, because I'm like, oh wait, Jonelle, this is not even why are you going back to that place? I think that's what's changed, but it's still there. It's still something that I may question. It's still something I'm like, okay, let me pull out those scriptures, so I have resources now, I have the tools now, I talk to my friends and they pray with me, all those different things. So I'm surrounded by all of this holiness, where it's just all right, don't even go back to that place you were before. DC was a total career move, by the way. That was the #1 reason why I moved here. And it was, a great market for news and politics. And so I knew that I was going to be in a place where it was going to be a career booster. So moved to DC, got started in my career at C-SPAN, really kind of worked my way up in the company. Started off as a production assistant, worked my way up to producer, and now currently I hold the international producer position, talking about and bringing in events from around the world. My career has been such a huge kind of part of my faith, the two things, and seeing how God has used me to be in an industry that is complicated, especially now in the middle of a presidential election. Complicated, gets a lot of criticism, is known for being, deceiving people. It's driven by money, corporations, that kind of thing. And so, where does God fit into all of that? I know who I am in God. I know who I am in Christ. And so being able to, arm myself every morning before I go to work, so that when I walk in, I treat people the way they should be treated, I treat people with respect. And these are things that we should be doing anyway, but I know for me personally, it comes from my desire and commitment to please God. And that is important to do on the job and in whatever you want to do.